Welcome to the Front Four Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Marchese. Alongside
Say it again. What's it called? Let's go. It's been a few weeks.
I know. The Front Four Fantasy Football Podcast. I don't know what episode it is, so don't ask me, but I do know that Jeff Azzopardi is my co-host. And I do know that you can follow us on Twitter at MattyMar89, at J_party, at front, the number 4
Hit
fantasy.
That follow button. Let's go. Hit that follow button.
We need to get some business out of the way since we haven't been here for 2 weeks or so.
Yeah, we missed a few weeks, but there's a lot going on. COVID stuff was like always in question with teams. There was a lot of talk.
And it was just, life happened.
It was a busy time of year.
Exactly. So it's right around Christmas. Yep. And so things got crazy. But there was something that we wanted to address. So I will go out and give Jeff props because he and I played each other in the
I think that was right before. Weren't we playing each other the last time we taped?
Yes, it was right before the semifinals. And you and I played each other. I lost Travis Kelce.
Come on.
And Tyreek Hill basically disappeared for 2 weeks during the playoffs because he was great the week before. That's true. And it just your team was just better than mine. Mm-hmm. I mean, like I had a lot of faith in Saquon Barkley this year. We'll get to him later. Don't you worry about that.
Yeah, there's a full segment for that.
But I do want to give Jeff props because he not only went and beat me in the semifinal, but he gets to the final and lays an absolute ass whooping where we're talking regular positions. You know, your one quarterback league, 3 wide receivers, 1 flex, 2 running backs, tight end, and full point PPR, but Jeff put up 200 points. May have even been more. I stopped counting at 200.
It was 205.
Stop the count.
Dawson Knox
with a 0
on the board, and I did leave 15 points on my bench, which was stupid, which we can get into after too. One of my week 17 takeaways, which was crazy. But yeah, it was a crazy week. It was, but yeah. Made a couple good decisions, 1 or 2 bad ones, but still ended up putting it up.
Didn't end up costing you. Remember
when Ja'Marr Chase couldn't catch the ball? Well, I drafted him and he caught the ball in week 17, baby.
Remember how dumb that conversation was? You and I had it in the preseason. Are like, oh, well, he can't see the ball. And he can't catch an NFL pass. It's like, shut up. He's really good. And he showed that he was really good.
Pretty good.
Yeah. So you wanted to know. Okay. So Cole's just a behind the scenes.
So that was us. That's in the league we play with. One of the leagues we play with each other.
Yes.
Right? And heading in again after beating you in the semis. Sorry for rubbing in it. Humble brag. We were talking about that final, and in the other league, the Dynasty League we were in, you were in the finals, and then you have a separate league that I'm not a part of yet. That you were in the finals too. So you had 2 finals going on. See, I only had 1. So really maybe
I actually had 3. I was in a best ball final too, which I'll tell the story. So we had somebody halfway through the draft. They said, I'm done. I'm not doing it. So 2 guys who were that? Yeah, I know. 2 guys were managers of the team who said, we can't get another guy because it's basically our group that's in a dynasty league together. Mm-hmm. We started a best ball league that we do every year. So this guy's like, I'm not interested. This is stupid, blah, blah, blah. So myself and another manager decided to pitch in and co-run the team. Now, co-run, we just co-drafted and then everything happens for you. Right, Jeff, you want to know how
discussion.
So I was in the final against myself and I couldn't beat myself. Sorry, I lost to the co-owned team. My team lost to my co-owned team. I couldn't even beat myself in a best ball final.
Man, come on. Be greedy. You got to be greedy and take that.
Dynasty final.
What happened, though?
I lose. Yeah. I lose. I didn't have a chance. I had Tyreek Hill was a dud for me. Man. And this is also I lost to the team that had that really sketchy trade earlier in the year where Devontae Adams and Darren Waller got moved for nothing. Yeah. And Devontae Adams was probably the difference in my matchup.
For sure. He had a pretty
because Nick Chubb put up a dud. And anyway, that's another story. Yeah. So the final of the league that we're not in together.
Yeah. This is the one I haven't heard about yet, and I've been avoiding asking you.
Yes.
I wanted to hear
as you should
on the podcast. Yeah.
So
I
Jeff
gotta share it with the world. Share it with the world.
Yeah, Jeff and I are texting after I congratulated him on his win because he had already had it wrapped up before the Sunday nighter even happened. Sunday and Monday nighter, Jeff didn't even need it. He's like, whatever.
Yeah, didn't need it. Whatever.
So I texted Jeff and I said, I can't remember how big of a lead I had. It was like maybe, I don't know if it was 10 points, but it might not have even
I thought it was even more.
No, maybe
like 20?
Or no, it was like 11. I think it was 11 points or something like that. I can't remember, but it was a small, it wasn't a big number. Right. I go in having Dalvin Cook and he has Justin Jefferson.
Mm-hmm. And hang on, the Vikings don't have Kirk Cousins.
Yeah,
so why wouldn't they hand off the ball a lot to Dalvin Cook?
Right.
That's what you expect. They're going to run all over him, right?
Right. So what ends up happening is Dalvin Cook ends up getting hurt. Alexander Mattison comes in and he takes away points that would have been Dalvin Cook's. Having said all that, can I ask a question? Why is Justin Jefferson on the field on that last drive of the game? Because you know that stupid screen pass that Sean Mannion threw to Justin Jefferson that he got like 6 or 7 yards on? That was the difference in my matchup. I lost by 0.6 points.
Come on.
Yes.
0.6 in the championship.
Yes. And you know what else is
championship.
And you know what else pisses me off even more is I played DeAndre Swift like an idiot instead of Boston Scott, and I would have had it wrapped up. So that's how I feel right now. I'm steaming.
How do you not start DeAndre Swift? I don't know.
I know. And that's like, but you know what though, Jeff? That was my own stupidity. He's been out that long. They weren't going to give him a full workload.
Yeah.
It was dumb.
But they're also the Lions. And you know what else happened in that game? They fell way behind. Like, you know, the game script didn't play for you. I don't know. It's
no. Tough. Seattle's run defense sucked. That's why I played Swift.
That's true. No, it's true, dude. Look at me. So I got lucky. I won that league, right? But like I lost Antonio Gibson. Right, who would have been a start, but I managed to pick up Patterson and I had him on my bench. But I was scared to start him because number one, I didn't think they'd throw him the ball. I didn't think he'd get a lot of third down work because they had never done it before.
Yep.
The Eagles' run defense had been playing pretty well lately. I also had Deontay Foreman. And you know, against the Dolphins, I saw what they did to Alvin Kamara, who was also on my team the week before. I thought there was no way to start him, right? So I took a shot and I thought, you know what, the Bucs don't trust really Ronald Jones. I don't think Arians does. And I put in Vaughn, and Ronald Jones gets hurt, and then Vaughn gets hurt, which I didn't even know. Did you know he had a rib injury? That's how
not going into that game. I didn't.
Yeah. So who knew that? But anyway, so had I started Patterson or Foreman, I would have had 15 more points. Thank God that didn't cost me. But in hindsight, to me too, it was like, should have just taken the guy I knew was going to get the reps. But what are you going to do, right?
And that was my concern going in. And I picked up Boston Scott to actually stop the other guy from picking him up.
And the other thing was Jordan Howard was active, right? Like had Jordan Howard not been active, you probably would have been inclined to start Boston Scott. Yeah, 100%. The fact that Jordan Howard did get a lot of touch, like he looked like he was gonna get some run and some play.
Boston Scott just had 2 touchdowns. 100%.
So like, I don't know how mad you can get at yourself for that, but yeah.
I'm plenty mad at myself. Don't you worry about that. I'm plenty mad at myself.
But knowing you for long enough, you beat up yourself enough.
0-3 in final appearances. Yeah, that's.
Here, you want to know a good league? So once I joined this league, the league I just won, I think for 3 years in a row, I was in the finals and had lost, right? Which
one? The work league?
Our work league.
Okay.
I was in the finals like 3 years in a row when I think like my first 3 years joining, right?
Yeah.
Does that remind you of a certain team?
It reminds me of me in the fantasy league that I lost in because that's 4 years straight in the finals since I've been in there.
I was going to say the
Buffalo Bills. Yes.
Maybe my projection is me winning this fan league this year means the Bills are going to win the Super Bowl, buddy. That's the light I'll give you before we get going here. Let's go.
Here's my week 17 observation. It sucked. That's my week 17 observation. Tyreek Hill sucked.
It's true. Well, to me, it was
DeAndre Swift sucked. Dalvin Cook sucked. They all sucked. My team was good, and I still managed to lose.
Yeah. Oh well.
Anyway,
at least you lost to yourself in one league. My week 17 observation was the defense that were supposed to be good weren't good.
No,
they weren't. They weren't good at all. Like I said, Eagles defense fell apart after they had been playing well. The Dolphins defense didn't show up at all. The Chiefs defense, like lucky for me and Jamar Chase, all of a sudden they were back to their old selves. Like, I don't know. It's crazy.
Oh, by the way, you want to know what the other thing that pissed me off about that too?
I can't wait to hear.
I had Joe Mixon on that finals team as well. So I had Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon, and DeAndre Swift. And Joe Mixon ended up getting into the end zone from the 1 yard line, and it was called back on 2 penalties.
Yes.
And then that ran down the clock on the next play, and I was done.
To not even give them a chance to go long to Tyreek Hill, the fastest guy in the NFL. Could have happened. That drive, if Patrick Mahomes had gotten that ball with 50 seconds left, who knows, right? You could have had a shot there too.
Joe Mixon, they ran Joe Burrow twice from the 1 yard line.
Yeah. Wow. How many plays did they get? There were penalties on what? 3-4 plays in a row? Just killed the clock for them. It was played perfectly.
Dude, Joe Mixon and Boston Scott will forever haunt me.
Well, hey, think of it. What could have been worse is your championship could have been in week 18 and everybody could be saying,
what is with that? Like, how does this still happen?
You know what I heard is a lot of commissioners just forgot to change the settings and it just plays out to the league. I know
a lot of commissioners that didn't change it, and it was actually week 16 because that was the standard because it was the week before. But how do you not check for anyway, let's move on to topic one.
Let's get going. Let's
move on to topic one. And that is, as we look back on the season that was our regular season MVP. So you and I agreed. So what's going to happen here is we're going to give a regular season MVP here and then a playoff MVP in the next segment. But the ones that we have, there's a consensus number one.
For sure. There's one I think we both have to talk about, which is pretty obvious, right?
Exactly. So let's just start it off. Cooper Kupp is absolutely 100% this year's fantasy MVP. Like it's not even close. He was the number one fantasy player. And I feel like that's super rare for a wide receiver to do.
Without a doubt. No, like
that's usually a quarterback or a running back. Yep. He was incredible with Matthew Stafford.
Crazy, insane, man. Like, when they talked about Stafford going there and how he had helped that offense, one guy it certainly did help was Cooper Kupp, man. He blew up this year.
And he was aided by the fact that just when Robert Woods was starting to get acclimated with Matthew Stafford, he got hurt.
Well, and let's be honest, talk about injuries, like Cam Akers going down in the preseason, like maybe made them more of a map passing team.
Yep.
Right. With Stafford, like Cooper Kupp had a lot of things go his way, and man, he stepped up though and got the ball every time.
So in a dynasty league, I know this is going to sound really crazy, but would you be willing to sell really high on him right now?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. What do you like? Yeah. Is he the top receiver on the board next year for you or what?
I still have Davante Adams ahead of him.
Because, dude, he was way ahead of everybody. Yeah, to me, see, the only thing I'll argue there, to me, it depends if Rodgers comes back to Green Bay with Adams.
Yeah.
Like, who's the quarterback that's throwing him the ball there, right? Like, to me, that's the only question. That is, I agree with you. Davante Adams, to me, would still be ahead of him. But to me, it's all about if Rodgers is back and, who's throwing Davante the ball.
Davante Adams, to me.
Because maybe that relationship between those two, between Stafford and Kupp, just keeps getting better. Who knows?
I mean, it's possible. It's possible. Right. I think Davante Adams is the better receiver. I think
Without
Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp is maybe in a better position. Well, he is definitely in a better position if Aaron Rodgers isn't back in Green Bay. Sure. Okay, I'll let you go first with your.
No, you go first.
You want me to go first? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm gonna go with the QB1. That's my boy. I don't have his jersey hanging up here because it's upstairs.
Who showed up in week 17 if you had him on your team.
Boy, did he ever. And he was really good all season. And Josh Allen was the QB1 this year. 40 total touchdowns, 34 passing, 6 rushing. He actually had 700 rushing yards, which was a little bit hard to believe. That's a career high. Now he would have had way more than 700 his rookie year, but he only played in 11 games, but had the 700 rushing or has the 700 rushing yards to go along with 4,168 passing yards. His fantasy points per game was actually higher last season, but like I mentioned, had the career year in rushing yards this year. And was the QB1. I mean, there were a lot of ups and downs with Josh Allen this year, but aside from a couple games, he was lights out basically every start. And there's not a lot of quarterbacks that you can say that about.
Without a doubt, man. There was a stat I tried to go back and found it because I know I heard it before this week, and it was about his totals last year and how people were like thinking he wouldn't be able to do it again, and he surpassed most of them. Like I know one was being in the top 5 for how many weeks in a row this year, and dude, he was crazy. And like I said, his ability to run, like it's crazy. Like I know that this will kind of like even impact where you're going to go with your playoff MVP, but like, man, him running in those touchdowns, I mean, didn't help me with Dawson Knox. Maybe is one of his favorite end zone targets, but man, if you have Josh Allen, yes, he was definitely an MVP this year. That was
crazy. We'll get to my playoff MVP later, and then I'll explain the Josh Allen effect on everything. But your regular season MVP is a very interesting one, actually.
Yeah, I'm going to go a little bit off the board here, and I'm going to go with a running back who...
And it's not Jonathan Taylor.
It's not Jonathan Taylor. It's not. It's actually Leonard Fournette. Because I think where people drafted him and the value you got out of him, like on a week-to-week basis, especially the last few weeks before he got hurt. And this is why I'm going to give it to him because, especially those weeks leading up to the playoffs, like his numbers were crazy. Okay, of course, my computer's not working right now to pull it up. But like he was insane this year to me. Like, once he got the starting job away from Ronald Jones, like
and it didn't take long.
And it didn't take long at all. Like, why can't I pull this? I just had it open. Now it's not working. Sorry. I don't know. Swearing already. Anyway, yeah, like, dude, he just performed like out of this world, and he seemed to become a great target for Tom Brady, who's having a great year on his own. But even in week 1, Matt, like he put up like 11 points the first 2 weeks. He dropped a bit, then consistently over 15 points for every other week, including weeks where he had like a 44, 22, 23. Like he was insane for where you drafted him. And this is all, of course, before week 16. So heading into, your playoff. But that's why I'm going to give him the regular season MVP, because to me, he was just insane. And given where you drafted him and that you could put him in your lineup every week, I don't think anybody really saw that coming. But to me, he was definitely a fantasy MVP this year for the regular season anyway.
So the biggest thing, and you mentioned it, and this is where we thought that maybe Giovanni Bernard was going to kind of slide in is in the passing game.
I was going to say all of us. I did forget to mention that. Thank you for saying that.
No, you mentioned as a target for Tom Brady, and
everybody all of a sudden you started targeting passes. Yeah, everybody thought Giovanni Bernard was going to get that because we knew Ronald Jones wasn't that guy, and that's why they brought Bernard in. But Fournette picked up the slack there. Like, man, it's insane to me, the numbers he put up, and just looking at his weekly contributions and how you could put him in there. I didn't see that come. I think I even traded him away in our dynasty league. Like, there's no way I saw that coming. And I think he deserves a lot of credit for stepping up and becoming that back that he was like maybe for a while in Jacksonville.
Everybody thought he was dead once he got cut by the Jags. Everybody's like, well, he's not very good anymore, blah, blah, blah. And turns out that Leonard Fournette is actually still pretty good.
Yeah, consistently had over 30 receiving yards like every week, which is crazy, on top of the rushing yards. And he found the end zone a bunch of times.
Which he did not. The last really good year that he had in Jacksonville, he had like 3 touchdowns. It was a ridiculous thing. And he had something like 1,700 total yards, and I think he had 3 touchdowns. It's just there was a positive regression coming with the workload, and that came this year because he got into the end zone a lot.
10 touchdowns this year, Maddie. 812 rushing yards and over 450 receiving yards, which is crazy.
That's where everybody was surprised, because I don't think that anybody saw that one coming.
Really cool. I would just needed to give him credit, because I think if you had him in your lineup and playing him some weeks and seeing the numbers he put up was crazy.
Yeah, and let's keep in mind, these are regular season MVPs for fantasy. This is before the playoffs, whatever.
Exactly. So don't count the last few weeks. That's what I'm saying. Like on a consistent basis, and especially with all the injuries we saw, and the guys, like all the guys who were drafted top 10, especially at running back, and all the injuries we saw this year, having Fournette like on your team and being able to put him in your lineup every week, I think that's MVP caliber
for sure. Okay, let's move on to playoff MVPs, and these are the guys that really shone over the course of the 3 weeks that the playoffs were around. Now, the guy that we agreed was number 1 was Joe Burrow. He was absolutely lights out. T. Higgins had a couple of really good games. Jamar Chase obviously had the big week in the final. And Joe Burrow was just, a lot of people thought, oh, they're going to play Kansas City. Kansas City's defense has been really good. We're not really sure.
He was a sit on a lot of people's, they had him in the sit category for week 17, which is crazy. And people were like, he
lit up the Chiefs.
He can't redo what he did the week before. Like that was just him against them. He lit them up. And what do we always talk about, Maddie, is those offenses that can sustain 3 receivers. Like for almost every week in the playoffs, he if you had any of his receivers, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, you were getting numbers. You were getting points.
Boyd scored a touchdown in 3 straight games,
which was crazy. Yeah. Jamar Chase, the first week of the playoffs, did not have a great game. That's why he, to me, wouldn't have been my MVP. But Joe Burrow's numbers were consistent throughout all the playoffs and put up fantastic numbers, which is crazy.
Okay, I'm going to give you the platform here to talk. This is a guy, you chose him as your playoff MVP that you've been harping on for a while now. And this was completely unexpected because the offense really ran through the running backs and hadn't been all that good. I leave the floor to you for your MVP.
So let's say this. So in the PPR leagues, he put up 23.5 points, 26 points, and then 35.4 points throughout the playoffs. Now, who could that be? Amon-Ra St. Brown of the Detroit Lions. A Detroit Lions guy is my playoff
and
MVP.
Tim Boyle was throwing him the ball
for 2 of those weeks, 2 out of 3 weeks, right? Yeah, which is insane. Like all of a sudden, these guys realize they have a number 1 receiver, especially in the red zone. Like this guy was a touchdown machine. He scored a touchdown in every week of the playoffs and was putting up yards, and he was getting the targets. Actually, the last 5 weeks, he had 12, 12, 11, 11, 11 targets. Like crazy. And he caught most of them, 10, 8, 8, 9, and 8. Like, man, he was getting the passes and he made the most of it. Like it was insane. But Maddie, here's my question to you. So like I said, the Lions all of a sudden realize they have a number 1 receiver. But like you got to admit that most of this production comes because DeAndre Swift was out. TJ Hawkinson was out. Like moving forward, like, is he a keeper for me now this year? Like, do I keep him? Is he for sure going to get, like, you can't expect that kind of production for him every week, but I think he is a legit, and Jared Goff, before he went down, started looking towards him. Like, what's your take on St. Brown?
So it depends on how many, like, you're talking for a work league, right?
Yeah. Well, just in general, like, like, should I consider him? Because obviously he is the number 1 receiver in Detroit now. Like, and he shows if you throw him the ball, he's going to make the most of it.
Yeah.
Like some of those matchups weren't even great for him. Like,
I don't know, here's what I tell you.
But with Hawkinson back next year, Swift back, like, man, I don't know. I mean, you can't expect that kind of production out of him, right?
I don't know. I mean,
do they go out? Do they get another quarterback, or is Jared Goff the guy? Like, I don't know. Like I said, the last 2 weeks, all of a sudden it was like Jared Goff started realizing, like I said, 12 targets the last 2 weeks. Jared Goff was in, but again, without DeAndre Swift, Hawkinson banged up. But I mean, that's my biggest question with him is what to expect from him next year.
How do you deny it though? It's like true. Historic. How do you deny it? And as a rookie too, like that's the thing that we haven't even discussed.
So
yet.
I talked the playoff numbers, like even the 2 weeks before that, he had 24.8 points and 15.3 points. Like the last 5 weeks were money.
Dude, it's undeniable what he did. And that's where I look at it and go, I don't know how you don't keep him.
Yeah, I know for sure. Without a doubt.
And in Dynasty, his price now is so high that you're like, let's just wait for him to have 3 bad weeks and then the guy sours on him.
For real. Well, okay. I mean, and a lot of people took him a while to get going, right, this year. But once he was in, he didn't get off to the greatest start.
But what did we talk about with rookies? We talked about it with Elijah Moore. We talked about it with Jalen Waddle. We talked about it with Rashad Bateman. They pick it up in the second half of the season. They become pros. And that's where I think the biggest difference.
Jamar Chase had that little dip, but
he had a dip, and then he came back.
Then he came right back. So strong in the last
because teams adjusted to him, and then he adjusted to the teams. That's what happens. Okay, my playoff MVP. I mean, if nobody saw this coming, and as a fan of the team, I definitely didn't see this coming. But Devin Singletary was tied with Rashad Penny for most points per game by a running back during the fantasy playoffs. That is wild to me.
And again, he probably could have beat him if Josh Allen wasn't selfish and ran those two in
Oh,
himself.
selfish Josh.
The
But you know
vulture.
what?
Anyways,
He had a TD in each of the 3 games in the playoffs, and he had 2 in last week's matchup. He had
without a doubt.
96 total yards or more, or 5 receptions in 2 of the 3 games. So, or in all 3 games, sorry. So the way I look at this is the Bills started to run the ball more with Josh Allen. It made Devin Singletary so much more effective because RPOs become a lot more like, yeah, you could give the ball to Devin Singletary here, rather than we know you're not giving the ball to Devin Singletary here. And then Devin Singletary started running more physically. He started to hit the hole better. He was actually shedding tacklers, which he never did. And the fact that Devin Singletary and Rashad Penny were the top 2 running backs in points per game during the playoffs is nuts to me. But it just shows you that sometimes all it takes is a slight adjustment or an opportunity. Like Devin Singletary got 23 carries last week.
Well, an opportunity, the team committing to him, right? As their back, like he was, right?
Consistency.
Like, here's the thing, even from week 14 played 82% of the snaps. Week 15 played 93% of the snaps. A bit of a dip the week after, 68, but then after that, 80% of the snaps. Like, he was in there, makes him a threat, makes him an option, like you're saying, for those. And he could run the ball. We know he's always had the talent, right? It was just about getting that opportunity. So you're 100% right.
It's attaching a running back to a good offense. It's why you start, even though Clyde
Leonard Fournette, during the regular season, because Brady and the Bucks committed to him. They dropped Ronald Jones. They committed to Fournette. They dropped Giovanni Bernard. They committed to Fournette, and his numbers blew up. And that's what the Buffalo Bills did over the last 4 weeks of the season.
Look at Darrell Williams is a prime example of a guy who not a lot of people think a lot about, but when he was given the opportunity, he shone with the Kansas City Chiefs, and he would get into the end zone, and that's what matters when you play. Like, obviously, you know, it's a stat you can't predict, but it's very valuable when they get into the end zone and get you 6 points.
For sure.
So I was very surprised that Devin Singletary was that high, but he's been really good.
Well,
so
again, like the last 3 games, 17 total touches, 22 in 2 of them. Like, again, you get that opportunity, you get the reps. We talked about it earlier. You got to play those guys, and they're gonna get points. They're gonna get points, no doubt. It's good.
All right. As we look back on the 2021 season, as it were, we're gonna look at some surprises right now, and then next we're gonna look at some disappointments. For me, the biggest surprise was Cordarrelle Patterson. He was either running back 7 or he was wide receiver 14, whichever way you want to put it. And I'm really curious to see if he's going to have wide receiver eligibility or running back eligibility. I can't see them doing both next year, but he was an absolute steal. He was probably a waiver pickup in most leagues after week 1 or week 2, and then he went on a tear. He didn't perform in the playoffs, but he did enough to make you think that as a free agent, somebody's going to give him some good money, and they're going to give him an opportunity to perform. You just hope that they use him like Atlanta used him in the first part of the season rather than the last, 3 or 4 games.
Yep, without a doubt. Totally agree with you on that one. I mean, nobody saw Cordarrelle Patterson coming, and shoot, man, we could have included him in our regular season MVP because he was putting up points consistently, running back or wide receiver.
And that's
he's getting the ball both ways. That is super key. Like,
having the eligibility to play wide, because you can plug him in your lineup wherever you need to, right? And that's, I think, a big thing with now the numbers didn't like you were going to slot him into you were going to slot him into your lineup wherever. But if you had lineup decisions to make, it made it a lot easier having that dual eligibility. So Cordarrelle Patterson was one of my big surprises. I'll let you go with your next one, with your first one, and then we'll go back and forth.
For the surprises?
Yeah.
I mean, I think, I know we've harped on this a lot, Maddie, but I'm going to go with the rookie QBs, especially those first 5 taken, like in the draft this year, like 5 in the top, 15 picks, top 3 picks. Like, man, at the beginning of the year, we talked about stashing some of these guys, or the guys who would get regular play. I know you were never high on Trevor Lawrence.
Nope.
But man, did these guys all underperform all year long.
Except Mac Jones.
Step Mac Jones, but the other thing with him is that he wasn't really given the opportunity to throw the ball a lot, so he wasn't getting you a lot of fantasy points. Like, you know what I mean? And then he had a bit of a rookie slump at the end of the season, like maybe close to the playoffs and that. Last week he showed up, but the 2 weeks before that, he was on a bit of a downward spiral. Like, man, just how excited we were for this rookie class. Like, just crazy to me. Fields came on strong, but you couldn't count on him all year. I mean, Trey Lance looked okay, but the fact he couldn't take the starting job away from Garoppolo, like, man, just one of my surprises, because a lot of guys drafted them or stashed them, and it just didn't pay off all season long. Crazy.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. And I predicted that Trevor Lawrence was going to be a bust this year. That was pretty easy. I'm surprised that Trey Lance and Justin Fields didn't perform. Those are the two for me.
Without a doubt. I mean, and Trey Lance looked good, but again, they played Houston, right? Yeah. Like, how much stock do you put in that?
I put none in that.
Right. Exactly. And the fact, again, that he couldn't take that job away from Jimmy Garoppolo all year, like.
And Jimmy had his struggles. There were points in the season where he
could have easily been flipped in for him without a doubt.
Okay. So one of my surprises, and this one, I mean, I look at it and say, maybe I shouldn't have been so surprised, but I was surprised that Mark Andrews finished as the tight end 1, because he was like, that spot is Travis Kelce's until he doesn't want it anymore type thing. But Travis Kelce had his ups and downs basically throughout the whole season, but Mark Andrews was consistent as it gets. I mean, that was even in spite of not having Lamar Jackson for a couple of games.
Yep.
And that was also with more competition for targets once Rashad Bateman came into the lineup, and I guess you could say, emergence or reemergence of Hollywood Brown. All Mark Andrews did was lead the team in receiving. He's the tight end 1. He's a monster in the red zone. He made big plays all year. I really thought that was Travis Kelce's until Travis Kelce said, I'm good. But that's not what happened. And Mark Andrews, good on Mark Andrews, because I really did not see this one coming.
Yeah, without a doubt. And Kittle too, having his struggles at the beginning of the season. Like, I mean, maybe that whole San Francisco offense, like, is crazy to me. But yeah, Mark Andrews stepped up, and man, he really did look like Darren Waller getting hurt, I guess, helped them too. But yeah, like Mark Andrews.
But Waller struggled too.
He did. He had a couple of great weeks, and then he had a couple of weeks where he really struggled. But those are 3 guys I think we would all consistently put ahead of him, right? Like,
Mark Andrews was always the tight end 4.
He had to be. Yeah, he had to be after those 3: Kittle, Waller, and Kelce, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, maybe I'll go the opposite way, like Robert Tonyan in Green Bay. Like, we knew he couldn't live up to like the touchdowns he was passing last year, but man, he was like, I think, what was he, tight end 24 or something? Like, he was nowhere on the radio, and he's unstartable.
And he got
week
hurt
after weeks of zeros. Yeah, and he got hurt. Like, it's crazy. Yeah. So people who bet on him for any kind of production was crazy.
Yeah,
I mean, the whole tight end as a whole this year was pretty tough.
Well, I'm pretty sure that Dalton Schultz is like tight end 4. So that kind of tells you everything that you need to know, because nobody saw that one coming. And by the way, I know people he's not on any of our lists, but people want to talk a lot about Kyle Pitts not living up to expectations, and he had over 1,000 yards.
Crazy.
I don't know what you were expecting.
Yeah. The biggest problem with Kyle Pitts, again, I think everybody said this, he just didn't find the touchdown. What do you have on the year? 1 touchdown? Like, that's a problem, right? For fantasy, I think he had 1.
But that's not always on him.
That's not on him at all. But
he's the only guy that they have when Calvin Ridley was dealing with his mental health stuff.
It's still the best season a rookie tight end has had since, again, Dick Butkus, which is crazy.
And there's been some pretty good tight ends that have come along since then.
Exactly.
And let's face it, Kyle Pitts is not a tight end. Kyle Pitts is a unicorn, and they're going to play him all over the formation. He's not going to block a whole heck of a lot, but that's not what he's there for.
Yeah.
So have fun with him at that eligibility as a tight end for as long as he has it, until they decide to change him to a wide receiver.
Yeah, Matty, 1 touchdown all year, week 5 against the Jets. That's all he had. Which is crazy.
Was that the Jets game? Did they play them in London? Was that the one where he went off?
That is the one.
That's right.
Exactly it.
Yeah, he had a monster day.
Monster game.
Yeah, it was like 160 yards or something.
119 yards.
There you go. It wasn't 160, but I mean, whatever. I was close.
Actually, the week after the bye, he had 160. So you just got those two.
Okay, so
that was
that's what it
against
was.
Miami. Yeah, for sure.
He was a monster.
You were right there.
Okay, let's go with the disappointments. And my first guy was super easy, because if there was ever a guy that you could lock into borderline wide receiver 1, high end wide receiver 2 numbers, regardless of the quarterback, it was Allen Robinson. And he fell so far down the chart that I couldn't find him on fantasy data on the first page. I had to go to the second page. He finished as wide receiver 83 in 11 games. Easily the most conspicuous fantasy player of this season. Like I said, always in that kind of wide receiver 1, back end to high end wide receiver 2. Fell completely off the map. And in a contract year where somebody's going to take a shot at him, and I'd be really curious to see where he ends up, because some of it was quarterback play. He obviously had the COVID issue, and then he had the one good game that he had. Then he had a hamstring issue. He pulled his hamstring on a great sideline catch. The talent's there. There's no question about it. Yep. But people were locking in Allen Robinson in the 3rd or 4th round of their drafts and going, set it and forget it. He may not be flashy, but he's going to get his 135 targets. He's going to put up 1,100 yards, and he's going to catch 8 touchdowns. And I'm fine with it. Not even remotely close.
Not even remotely close. That's right. It is crazy to think what the expectations for him were and where it ended up. Oh, man, it's crazy. I mean, and let me just follow up with this. Like, there were a lot of wide receiver 1s that like didn't live up to the expectations this year. Like, it's crazy when you look at where you draft. I mean, I see a lot of people upset with the year Stephon Diggs had, right? Like, depending where you drafted them, with DeAndre Hopkins getting hurt, like, man, there were a lot of those top tier, AJ Brown being out for a number of weeks, right? Like this year was tough on a lot of those top receivers.
Calvin Ridley was drafted very high with Julio not there.
There's another one for sure. Yeah. People had high expectations for all those guys. So all those wide receiver 1s that were up there that people took pretty high in the draft that didn't live up. I mean, crazy.
And let's face it, Tyreek Hill didn't have the year everybody thought he was going to have either.
Right.
He had a really good year by
because that offense
standards.
struggled for a while, right? Yeah. Which is what you never expected. That you didn't. Nobody expected that offense to ever struggle, and they did for a number of weeks. Remember that ridiculous conversation? Like, are the Chiefs even going to make the playoffs? Yeah, they're done. They're not. Yeah,
they still got a chance at the number 1 seed.
Come on, man. Like, it's crazy.
We see some weird things.
It's true. Well, I mean, it's a week to week thing, right? I mean, that's where the term overreaction Monday came, right? Because especially when you're playing fantasy.
Oh my God. We live off of overreaction.
Exactly. It's true.
So did you have another disappointment?
I did. Well, yeah, my one will be Chase Claypool. I had huge expectations for him, man.
You did.
I did. I was high on him coming in after some of the stuff we saw from him last year. I thought maybe he could take over that Pittsburgh offense. And maybe the Pittsburgh offense as a whole, like, Ben just couldn't throw the ball. So which limited Chase from getting downfield and getting the ball. And we also saw kind of a bad attitude. We saw some frustration set in there. Chase Claypool just let me down in every single way. It was a huge disappointment to me. That's not even from the Canadian angle. Like he just couldn't put it together. He had injuries to deal with as well this year. Yeah, man, he'd be my first disappointment for sure.
They definitely need it. Well, Ben's retiring, so they're going to get a new quarterback. But
isn't that crazy though? But not even at any point did they think about putting Mason Rudolph in because he's that bad. Man, maybe that should have been my surprises for this year is how bad some of the backup quarterbacks are.
Oh my God.
Like you even talked about Minnesota last week. Like some of these guys don't look like they belong in the NFL at all.
They look like they belong in the YMCA flag football league.
Dude, what's going on with backup quarterbacks? Man, it's crazy to me.
It just shows that it's a once you lose your, the best backup quarterback in the NFL is probably Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah, seriously.
Because at least he was a starter. Andy Dalton.
Do we know sucks. Geno Smith was even in the league before?
He was actually pretty decent in the games that he played.
But did you know he was a backup quarterback?
Yeah, Nick Foles is a third stringer, and he's better than Sean Mannion is.
Seriously.
There's no question.
And they don't even want to touch Kellen Mond and Zimmer.
Oh, that was ridiculous.
he saw enough of it. He sees enough of him. He doesn't even want to talk about putting him in the game. Like,
Mike Zimmer's getting
happening.
Mike Zimmer's getting fired,
fired.
and he should get fired for putting Justin Jefferson on the field on that last series. That's what he should get fired.
Are you still bitter about that? Jeez,
yes.
How long ago was that?
Yes, it wasn't long enough ago. Do you have another disappointment? Because I have one more.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, Saquon Barkley for me. He fell in drafts, and I thought getting him at like 108 was an absolute steal. I tried to get him wherever I could. He finished as RB 31 in 12 games, and I don't blame him for everything because that team was so bad. The offensive line was trash. Daniel Jones was trash, and then they put in Mike Glennon. He's trash.
And then they couldn't even pick up
trash.
Then they're alternating between Fromm and Glennon in the same game. Like, what is going on there?
It was a disaster, and he was coming off of an injury. So I think Saquon's draft stock is going to drop a lot, but I really do think that the Giants are going to go out and get a quarterback. I don't think Daniel Jones is back next year.
Russell Wilson, maybe?
That's
I
who
totally
I
see Russell Wilson going there too. And the other thing I keep hearing is a lot about Joe Judge and how hard he worked the team, trying to work them hard, and maybe to all these injuries because the receivers couldn't stay healthy either. Like
maybe Joe Judge is a bad coach. Maybe he's a
bad.
I'm pretty sure he is a bad coach.
There'll be some good coaches out there. Maybe they'll go pick up a new coach along with a new quarterback.
Maybe they'll get Mike Zimmer.
Maybe piggybacking off yours, Matt, I'll add Ezekiel Elliott to the disappointments because he really didn't play. Like there were some people putting him in the top 5 for draft classes this year. And again, a guy who dealt with nagging injuries all year. But I don't think there were times we thought Tony Pollard was going to step up and take that starting job. Like, for what we expect out of Zeke, like to me, it was kind of a disappointing season for him as well.
Okay. So
he had how many? Yeah, I got to look through. He had multiple weeks with just single digit points.
Okay. So here's what I'm going to tell you. You talked about the volatility at the running back position. Mm-hmm. You know where Ezekiel Elliott finished?
Where?
RB6.
No, he did not. Come on.
Mm-hmm. But that's not a testament. Like Ezekiel Elliott was bad this year. Ezekiel Elliott 7
weeks with single digit points, man.
So what is that? But this is what I'm saying. So in most years, because we had so many injuries and COVID and whatever, in most years, so Cordero Patterson finished at RB7, and he would have been wide receiver 14. That's usually reversed.
Yeah.
If you finish as the RB or wide receiver 7, you're usually the RB 14.
Dude, that's insane. You've blown my mind with that. Maybe I need to run that back. Take the rewind the tape and let's.
Jeff, you're not wrong. You are absolutely not wrong. He's absolutely a disappointment. He didn't get to 1,000 yards in the 16 games.
Right.
Yeah, and Tony Pollard looked way better. Ezekiel Elliott looked slow. And Jeff.
That should have been maybe one of my surprises. Some of the offenses we could trust on. Already mentioned Pittsburgh. Dallas's had some struggle. Like it was crazy.
Who knows what you're going to get out of Dallas?
Yeah, you never know from week to week. I mean, and again, like we talked about too, KC's offense struggled. Like these offenses we thought were sure things for points every week weren't. They were long, and this was like 3 to 4 week stretches where they couldn't put up points. Crazy.
Yeah, it was what we can say for absolute certain. We're not going. By the way, for those listening, we're not going to do a not so 2-minute drill because
there's no news, nothing to talk about.
We've already said
the not so 2-minute drill was at the beginning of the pod. Yeah. Go back and listen.
So we can say this with the absolute certainty: 2021 was a cluster bleep.
Yeah,
I don't even know what happened.
It was the most random, for sure. And you know what? Just NFL year, like which related to fantasy, right? Like you couldn't tell what a team was week to week, couldn't tell what a player was week to week. It was an interesting year for sure. So don't feel bad you didn't win any of those leagues, man. Next year we'll get them more consistent.
I haven't won a league in like 3 years. I won the Dynasty League last year. So
there you go. I know your team was a powerhouse. You should have. I mean, and again, the injuries were just ridiculous.
Yeah, trading for Christian McCaffrey ended up not being a good idea on my part.
Again, man, look at all those top 10, top 20 picks maybe and see who lived up to expectations. It's crazy. We'll get into that. We got to do a future episode where we rank our top 5 at maybe every position heading into next year.
Yeah, see how that blows up in our face.
Yeah.
What we can do is look back on draft positions and where guys finished. Like if you look at the top 5 guys selected and where they finished, I bet you're not even remotely close to where they actually finished based on their ADP.
Yeah.
I don't even think it's remotely close.
I agree.
That'll be for
I agree.
next week.
Although you just blew my mind with Zeke, because apparently you just finished like 1 or 2 spots after where he was average
But
draft.
again, the position is so volatile. Like, it didn't make any sense. You said he had 7 weeks where he had single digit points. In no other year has a guy had 7 weeks of single digit points and finished in the top 6. There's no way. And if somebody can come up with that information, I would like to see it. Because if you can't, I will call you a liar.
Love it.
And with that, we will wrap things up. This has been the Front Four Fantasy
season,
Football
though, Maddie.
Podcast.
It's been a fun season, giving us a
our
lot to talk about.
first year doing this podcast. I mean, I think we've gotten better.
Well, that's what's good. See, they were just trying to throw us for a loop in our first season. Just that's all. That's all.
But we will power through.
We will. Look at that. Be
through.
in championships and win championships.
Let's hope so. All right. That'll do it for this week. The Front Four Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Marchese. Alongside me has been Jeff Azaparty. Follow us on Twitter at MattyMar89, at J_party, at Front4 Fantasy. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, on Spotify, wherever you get your pods. And we'll talk to you next week.
Take care.